she just knocked the art world out, because it's like we collect the great Roman sculpture as well. This is the great Nancy Fried sculpture. This is the contemporary woman, believe it or not.
I was in San Francisco and a hippie. I was 25. I met a woman, Jerry Allen, who's a performance artist, and she had just moved to LA to go to a place called the Women's Building. I flew down to see her. We spent one night together. I got on an airplane, went back to San Francisco, and within 24 hours, I had moved to LA to go to the Women's Building. I walked into this building and women were wielding sledgehammers and building walls, and there was a printing press and a lithography press and a letter press, which is like my favorite thing to do. And when I went to the Women's Building, they said, "Oh, you're an artist." Like, what? And then my life I started making art. I moved to New York, and one day, I'd been in New York maybe a month, a friend, Joyce Kozloff, who was a successful artist at the time, said, "Does April Kingsley know you're in town?" And it was like, no, she doesn't know I am to know I'm in town. And a few days later, she came to look at my work and put me in a show called Islamic Illusions, which became at the time, a really big deal. And it was all big names. It was Joyce Kozloff, Ned Smythe, Valerie Jardin, I don't know. And then me.
Way back when Soho first arrived, people would go down in tour buses, and people would be in buses saying, "Oh, that must be an artist, that must be an artist," Pretty funny. They got over that, But that must be an artist is Nancy. And there is no such thing as having to catch up as a creator. You can do it now, and you can do it at 95. We are what we are, and we keep on growing.
I made these little reliefs out of flour, salt, and water, not as an artist, just to be doing something. And they were actually scenes from my life, which at the time, because I was selling marijuana, I had a triple beam scale. And there's a little dough piece on the wall where there's a woman. Is she clean? She's in a bandana. I never did these hippie things, but all the hippies wore bandanas, and she's nursing her baby, and someone else is rolling a joint, and there's a little triple beam scale, and they were, little pieces. I don't sit down and say I'm going to do a body of work doing da-da-da, but I made pieces, and then the work changes.
Now, what's interesting, the many sculptures where it was the one breast. She was pretty young when she had her first mastectomy. That's very powerful in terms of going past our body formation.
And I said, unless a breast pops up in the morning, my work will always have one breast because I'm using me as a model. At a point, it wasn't about mastectomy. It was about rejuvenation. One breast, no breasts, two breasts. I mean, all of my work was about standing proud and tall, no matter what. Third woman who changed my life, it was first Jerry Allen and the Women's Building, then April Kingsley with putting me in a show where then I got all this attention. And then the third woman was director of the Grand Modern on Madison Avenue, and her name was Berta Walker, still is her name.
It's interesting with Nancy. I actually went to her studio. I didn't know Nancy at all. And I walked in and I saw this room filled with these great torsos.
She came, she saw my work, and these were now the one-breasted torsos.
And I started looking at the sculpture. It was made in bronze, it was in terracotta, there were arms with heads coming out of them. I thought, wow, this is a fascinating artist.
And she just went crazy and gave me a show.
So I started looking at it and I said, Nancy, we have to do a show. I like her guts and I like her beauty and her spirit. She had a lot of courage and she has a lot of humor and she can see the dark side and she can release it. And that's mainly what she does. She works with our truth, our pain, our going through it. The whole of society, the whole of human beings, we all go through it. Not so many of us are as honest about it or even know it that much, what the growing pains are. We aren't all perfection, it turns out, and I'm awful sick of, and she's awful sick, and we're all sick of having to be the perfection. I instinctively resonated to her sense of the spirit of pain, the spirit of loss, the spirit of growing through it. She really made beautiful, beautiful sculpture, so I showed it. I remember bringing a piece and putting it in the window on Madison Avenue, and everybody, all the men in the whole gallery practically couldn't walk by the window. It was so uncomfortable for them because these were big breasts, big torsos, but with one breast scarified. But after people got over the shock, there was so much feeling. There's so much heart. There's so much truth and soul in what she does that I think pretty quickly people got over the fact that we're looking at a figure that had had a mastectomy.
We rented the loft about 43 years ago, and it was completely different. It was owned by a Scientologist, and over time, it's just become something else.
It was always a creative, extraordinary environment.
Everybody else in the building, they come, they go, they try to make money on their lofts. I could be here without going outside for a year, I think. I hate leaving.
I'd love to be doing something with her art because it's really installation art and it's completely different from the sculpture.
I love the loft. And I love that when I stopped making sculptures, that this became my palette, the walls. What the loft is what my work is. It's a visual journal. Whether it's the tiles on the wall, the things hanging. Oh, I got this in Morocco. I got that in India. Because we travel with, I always take a big empty suitcase. This is my home. I mean, truthfully, art has no value at all, except that somebody has said, oh, this has value. I'm sure there are a lot of artists who are as great as Van Gogh, Matisse, or anybody around. It didn't happen. Other than calling April Kingsley to say, Joyce Kozlov said you might like to see my work, I've never done anything to make my career for the career. Literally, like, the most important for change in my life for women. In LA at the Women's Building. It was an incredible, really one of the most exciting times anybody could have of being told, as women, you can do anything.